The work had no rhythm, just strike after strike, the crude mallet crashing against unyielding stone. Each blow jarred through Turul's arms and shoulders, the same tortured motion beneath the glare of the climbing sun. Only when the final broken slabs clattered into the cart, did the silence shift. At last, it was full.
Pull it.
The order was simple, but the task was brutal. The muscular slave leaned forward, the iron rings at his wrists grinding against raw skin, as he strained to drag the now loaded cart from the rocky clearing. The weight was immense, far more than the empty burden he'd hauled before. Every fiber in his frame screamed with fatigue. His muscles, swollen from hours of hammering, trembled under renewed demand. No food, no water, not even a moment's rest. Very slowly, Turul dragged the cart across King Rose's compound. A path chosen not for convenience, but for spectacle. The sheer weight behind him forced his labor-hardened shoulders to hunch forward, pulling his head up, until his face met the full blaze of the sun. Chains at his ankles rattled with each trudging step, iron balls pouring the dirt. His sweat-slicked body glistened, muscles knotted, displayed in full view. This was a punishing procession, designed so all within the walls would witness.
That's the rebel chief, eh?
As the spectacle crawled into view, murmurs stirred from shaded balconies and narrow windows overhead. The young man in his prime, bare-chested, glistening, dragged the overloaded cart like a yoked beast. But that wasn't all. The sharp crack of a whip tore across his back, the sound echoing, clean and cruel.
Look at those shoulders.
Veins like ropes.
Strong enough for real work.
He's handsome, too.
At last, they reached one of the front gates. Massive doors looming above like the gaping maw of a watchful beast. The march had been long, slow, agonizing. But every brutal step gave him something more, a glimpse of the compound's layout. And at the center rose the Tower of Evil. His focus. Beneath that stone colossus lay the dungeon, where his comrades still endured. The whip cracked against the muscular slave's back. Harder, sharper than before. The sting tore through sweat and skin, shattering the quiet strategy forming in his mind. He staggered, breath catching, muscles recoiling in pain.
Stop here, slave.
Thomas barked, his voice thick and dragging like mud. Turul let the cart settle with a groaning jolt, the wooden wheels sinking into the dirt. His arms fell free at last, one crossing his broad chest to clutch the opposite forearm. An instinctive grip to soothe the deep ache in his muscle and bone. He stood still, panting, chest heaving like a forge bellows, sweat streaking the grime down his torso. Just a moment, He needed it.
Move.
Came the bark again.
Carve the spikes.
The barked order barely faded, before Turul's eyes settled on the pile before him. Thick wooden logs, scattered and raw, their ends still blunt and untouched. These were no ordinary timbers. They were meant to be sharpened into cruel stakes for some defensive barrier. The next labor was clear. His muscles still throbbed from the cart, but now his hands would be put to shaping weapons. Meant not for him but against his own. Against the rebels he once led. The well-built prisoner set to the task without argument. The heavy axe in his calloused grip felt familiar. This was no punishment, but a craft etched into his muscles and memory. Since boyhood, he had honed this labor under the watchful eye of Tanar, who had raised him, not only as a son, but as a warrior. Each swing was precise, fierce, and fluid. The axe bit deep, again and again, each chip flying like barked memory, the rebel's body both tool and testament. When the last stake was shaped, the sun had crowned the sky. Turul drove the axe head down into the dirt, the metal steaming faintly from overuse. He wiped his brow with his free hand, clearing the torrent of sweat pouring from his glistening skin. His breath came in shallow, parched gasps. Every muscle line gleamed under the punishing light. But respite was denied.
Set him up with those rocks.
Thomas jabbed a filthy finger at the cart. The enslaved fighter hoisted a massive rock onto his shoulder, arms trembling as the coarse weight pressed into sunburnt flesh. He needed the larger stones, to brace each sharpened log at a proper angle, fixing them into position with brute force alone. Again and again, he repeated the task. Lifting, positioning, adjusting. A low grunt slipped from his clenched jaw, as he shifted one stubborn stone into place, his strength drawn down to the last reserves. These were the hardest tasks. Hauling the heavy stones, positioning the thickest logs. But Turul understood their game. They would never let him complete the entire job. He was here only to lay the bones of a barrier. An unwilling hand building the very wall that would stand against his own. When the pile of large stones ran out, Turul didn't slow. He adapted. He heaved 2 medium-sized rocks, one onto each shoulder, quickening his pace to keep the labor moving under the punishing noon sun. But it still wasn't enough. Or perhaps the dim-witted Thomas simply couldn't comprehend the effort. The whip cracked again. A raw grunt tore from Turul's throat. Not of pain, but anger.
You have to finish this cart before my lunch.
The giant barked, his voice thick with smug laziness. Still, the rebel kept moving. Not for the idiot's sake, but because slowing now would only bring more lashes and wasteful pain.